أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum, and welcome to another edition of Perspective. My name is Faizel Patel. In tonight's show, we look at the 11th Israeli Apartheid week that just ended on Sunday last week, the death of a pilot while fighting the wildfires in the Cape, new technology for informal settlements to address the power shortages, and we look at some tech news as well. Remember, you can interact with me by sending me a mail on faisal@itvnetworks.tv. You can even drop me a tweet on @Faizi143, or you can comment on facebook.com/Faisal Patel. Now, the South African chapter of the annual Israeli Apartheid Week came to an end on Sunday afternoon on the streets of Sandton at a robust, diverse and successful IAW closing protest. This year, Israeli Apartheid Week, or IAW, in its 11th year, was by far the biggest and most successful to date. Now, for those that don't know, we did have Kwera Kakana last week on the show. IAW is a campaign aimed at bringing an end to Israel's apartheid policies and violation of international law, and Kwara explained that beautifully last week. Now, the campaign consisted of over 200 events in more than 45 South African towns and cities. Some of the events' highlights included a packed comedy event or evening at Wits University and UCT with renowned entertainers from ETV's late night news or crew, including Kagiso Lediga, Mashabela Galane, Christopher Steenkamp, and others. Now, another highlight was the Rhythms of Resistance concert with Lebo Mashile, Tumi Molekane, JR, and Reason. Now, various government ministers, members of parliament, and other politicians also participated in this year's Israeli Apartheid Week, and no doubt you, even the viewer, have participated in Israeli Apartheid Week. Now, with the Israeli Apartheid Week, you must remember that the whole focus also is on Israel to ensure that they get rid of these apartheid policies. But what did Israel also do? There was a visitor in South Africa, and we're going to come to that particular issue now. Now, the Palestinian embassy in South Africa said it was aware that Bassem Eid, claiming to be a human rights activist, was in the country as a guest of the pro-Israeli lobby. So Bassem Eid was a guest of the pro-Israeli lobby. Now, the embassy said that the purpose of Eid's visit was to undermine the current nationwide 11th International Israeli Apartheid Week. Now, a lecture by Eid at the University of Johannesburg was discontinued last week Wednesday after students barged into the venue and interrupted the speaker, calling him a liar and a sellout. Now, this is according to witnesses that were at the scene. Now, in an article in the Citizen newspaper, Eid claims he is passionate about the Palestinian cause, but felt South Africa should rather focus on bridging the divide between Hamas and Fatah and not Israel and Palestine. And Eid also said that Israel or Palestinian issue, or the Israel and Palestinian issue, is more of an international matter, and boycotting Israel could actually harm the Palestinian people, and therefore he is against that particular cause. And then what happened is we spoke to the Palestinian ambassador to South Africa. His name is Abdul Hafiz Naufal, and he said Bassem Eid is nothing. He's forbidden to enter Palestinian territory, and he's working with the Israeli intelligence services. And like I said, this is according to the Palestinian ambassador Abdul Hafiz Naufal. And he also says, and I'm going to quote him, he says, "I believe he represents no one, nobody. He represents only but himself. So, have you participated in the Israeli Apartheid Week? Let me know your thoughts and comments on my Twitter handle, on my email, or also on Facebook as well. And this is something that comes once a year, so we should go out and support the cause. Israel needs to do away with the apartheid policies. We in South Africa have fought so hard for freedom, and we know what it is to go through that and to achieve that freedom, to relish in the freedom we have today, and the least we can do is support the Palestinian people. Now, moving on to Cape Town, we know that in the past few weeks that fires have ravaged the Cape Peninsula. Hundreds of hectares of vegetation destroyed, a lot of homes destroyed as well. Well, it was a tragedy that's eventually going to come to that. And on Saturday, helicopter pilot Hendrik Willem Pierce Mare was showing a little girl who wanted to be a firefighter or a pilot, how a helicopter works. And we as little boys, as little children, we're always fascinated by the flying equipment, especially helicopters and airplanes or airplanes. Now, hours later, he died while battling a raging fire near Olifantsbos in the Cape Point Nature Reserve. Now, tributes have poured in for the 71-year-old Mare, a Huey helicopter pilot who emerged as one of Cape Town's heroes who fought the fires that gripped the South Peninsula over the past few weeks. And we've seen the pictures are absolutely devastating. Like I said, thousands of hectares of vegetation destroyed, and it's absolutely heartbreaking to see that. Now, Mare was part of the Working on Fire crew. The chopper crashed while water bombing at the Cape of Good Hope section of Table Mountain National Park, Cape Point, at about 11:30 a.m. last week. Now, Mare was airlifted to a nearby hospital where he was declared dead on arrival. Very, very, very sad indeed. Now, the pilot was among those lauded for exceptional work over the past week when more than 2,000 drops, each of about 1,100 liters of water on the fire that was started near Muizenberg, spread to Noordhoek, Houtbay, Tokai, and Constantia. Now, Working on Fire spokesperson Evelyn Holthausen says that the incident occurred on the western side of the reserve. Mare was killed when his Huey was in a forced landing while on a wildfire suppression duty. Now, we know that a helicopter uses probably the air, and I'm not technically inclined on this particular aspect, but possibly some of the warm air emanating from the fire caused the helicopter to malfunction, whatever the case may be. Maybe you out there, the viewer, can say that why something like this could have happened. Obviously, the Civil Aviation Authority would investigate to determine the causes of the crash. But I've seen it before, and there was footage before where sometimes helicopter tends to, or even a plane tends to get into turbulence and they go into difficulty. Now, the local government, MEC Anton Patel, described the accident as a tragedy, and indeed, it has been a tragedy, hasn't it? Adding that it had been a very difficult week for disaster management especially teams, rather not terms, in the province. Now, Sunday's crash follows an accident on Thursday morning last week also, which claimed the life of a West Coast firefighter, Nazim Davies, who was just 25 years old, who died while on his way to help firefighters in the greater Hermanus area of the Overstrand municipality. Now, what Bradell also says that Davies and Mare's death was a double blow to the province. And it's very, very unfortunate that while these people are trying to save certain vegetation, trying to save people's homes from being destroyed by the fire, and unfortunately, very sad that they have to lose their life in the whole situation. And Bradell also says their thoughts are with the family of the victims who died while battling one of the most destructive fires in the province. His contribution and sacrifice will never ever be forgotten. And remember, we need to now expound a little bit on this, that he has lost his life, absolutely tragedy. We know that the fire has destroyed, like I mentioned, thousands of vegetation as well. But let us think about it, that this is not the first incident of fire, especially in the Cape Peninsula or in Cape Town. We heard it a few months back on Lion's Head as well, that there was a fire. But what causes these fires? And I'm going to expound a little bit on it. Sometimes maybe when you're driving along the path or wherever it is, not even in Cape Town, anywhere in the country in South Africa, that sometimes people tend to smoke or they're smoking in their cars. And what they do is instead of using the ashtray, they take the cigarette butt and they throw it out into the veld or alongside the road. And this obviously now starts a reaction where there is a fire, and this fire then spreads. So if this is the case where they investigate the fire was started by a cigarette butt, it is very, very unfortunate. I think we need to be very more careful when especially disposing of cigarette butts. And the person or whatever the cause of the fire, whoever is responsible for this fire must be taken to task. We can never ever recover the lost vegetation. It's scorched earth. It is absolutely destroyed the landscape of the beautiful Cape Town in South Africa. And like I said, let us take cognizance. Let us be careful, especially when getting rid of our litter, getting rid of our cigarette butts, that they can have serious consequences, such serious consequences that even the two firefighters lost their lives. We're going to go for a break. After the break, inshallah, we will cover another story that's been making headlines in South Africa. Stay tuned to Perspective.
أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى إلهي صرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى فيا ربي أنا.
Welcome back to Perspective. My name is Faizel Patel. Another story that's been making headlines in the past few weeks. We know that various municipalities across South Africa have been protesting, sometimes amid violent protests as well, regarding housing, sanitation, and electricity issues. Well, the Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements, Jacob Mabobolo, has announced that solar power technology will be introduced to informal settlements as soon as possible. So, as soon as possible, well, we're hoping for a date. Probably a date would have been better. As soon as possible could mean a month, 2 months. Well, basically what Mabobolo says is that provincial government is in talks with Eskom to ensure that areas like Tembelishle in Lenasia have proper access to electricity. Now, this was revealed during an executive meeting with protest-hit municipalities in Parktown on Monday. Now, what Mabobolo has outlined is that the supply of electricity to these areas will not be free and has encouraged community members to pay for a fee. And I think that is very, very important, that you go ahead and you protest for services, and maybe certain areas like Tembelishle don't have the infrastructure. It is reported that this area is built on dolomite ground and they might not have the infrastructure. And while the Gauteng department or the Gauteng government has said that we will install electricity or sanitation or water facilities, but these things come at a cost, and somebody needs to bear the cost for these infrastructure to be implemented, and somebody must take responsibility for it. And if it's not the residents, then who? So while you are demanding water, while you are demanding electricity, while you are demanding houses, then you must be prepared to pay for it, because it doesn't come for free. If it doesn't pay, and there were reports in the past where sometimes the blame game is going on, that certain areas, certain informal settlements are getting services for free, and it becomes the responsibility of other residents to pay for the services. So there must be a responsibility for it to be taken. We know that Eskom is suffering massively with load shedding. They are doing load shedding on a whole lot of provinces across South Africa. Gauteng has been severely affected. Load shedding has severe impact on everybody, whether it's personal homes, on factories, on the courts, everywhere. So, and then obviously we need to pay for these services. Eskom needs to pay for their services, and they have to pay salaries and a whole lot of other costs that come with it. Coal that runs the generators. So while Mabobolo has said that the services will be implemented, solar energy, which can obviously utilize the power of the sun, but to implement these services, it's going to require a lot of money. And that's where we should do our bit. Communities must ensure that they pay for the basic services. And we can do, and in this way, we can progress and we can ensure that the services enjoyable for everybody. Now, meanwhile, the residents of Tembelishle and Lenasia have agreed to bridge the divide. There was tensions between the two communities. Now, they've decided to bridge the divide after recent tensions due to the service delivery protests. Now, the two communities held a meeting in Lenasia on Monday. Now, residents of Tembelishle say residents of Lenasia are not their enemies and their protests are purely related to service delivery. The two communities have agreed to pave the way forward in terms of working together. And I can understand where they're coming from. You are frustrated. You got no water. You got no electricity. And you go on the protest. You burn tires. You stone cars. And obviously people, probably residents of Lenasia, felt that they are being the targets. But this particular person I spoke to yesterday, and the spokesperson for the community of Tembelishle says that Lenasia residents are not the target. They are not the enemies. And the target, or the enemies, if you want to call them the enemies, are actually the people that are not supplying them with water and electricity and housing. Your thoughts and comments on my mail, on Twitter, or on Facebook. Another story that's been making headlines recently: South African Airways, or SAA, has apologized to customers after erroneously advertising Johannesburg to Abu Dhabi business class fares. Listen for this, just 858 Rand 72 cents on its website, but said it would not honor the mistakenly discounted fares. In a letter to customers, SAA said it deeply regretted the inconvenience caused by the publication of the erroneous fares to the passengers who may have thought they have booked and purchased a valid ticket for an erroneous cost. Now, in a statement, they said, "We apologize for this unfortunate situation." This is according to the airline. Now, according to a customer that I spoke to, he says that he discovered the special on SAA's website, which has since been removed. Now, after Juma, according to him, after Juma, a lot of people started talking about this massive special, business class tickets to Abu Dhabi for just less than 900 Rand. Absolutely too good to be true. And he says a friend told him, "We must book it." And then he goes on to say that they accepted the money and the departure and arrival dates were confirmed, and after that the e-tickets were issued. Now, and then he did say after that, they were like happy, they booked these tickets. Where are you going to get the tickets at that price? Then SAA now states that the fare that was purchased was incorrect and resulted from an inadvertent error that was beyond their control. And then also they say they advise that SAA is not obliged to provide services for compensation that is erroneously published and commercially unfeasible. We know that SAA is going through a difficult time. There's even talk of retrenchment of some staff or putting some staff on early retirement. As a result, because of the fare SAA says that you booked was invalid, we have cancelled your reservation ticket, and this is according to the airline. And I did speak to the SAA spokesperson. His name is Tlali, and he says the airline takes full responsibility for the glitch and will refund customers of the faulty tickets. And he also says the airline would investigate the cause of the problem to prevent it happening in the future. Now, recent reports indicate that also SAA have given the option to certain customers who bought these tickets to buy the Abu Dhabi fare for about 2,000 Rand, but it will not be business class, it will be economy class. Your thoughts and comments on the story. Have you bought a ticket? Let me know on my various Twitter handles, on my Twitter handle, on my email, or on Facebook as well. Now, another sad story that has been making headlines as well. It happened in Lenasia South. A businessman from Lenasia South was killed after an armed robbery at about 6:30 p.m. on Thursday last week, and this was according to Gauteng police. Now, there was an armed robbery, according to K. Makubela, after this man was shot and killed. People were trying to rob him and trying to, take the car or the bag that he possibly had. Now, according to a source that I spoke to, the businessman was on his way to Lenasia South with two other passengers when they were accosted by a group of men at the stop street on the corner of Cosmos and the K43, if you know the Lenasia South area. Now, they were trying to grab the bag from one of the passengers, and he resisted a little bit. I mean, normally anybody, that's a normal reaction. And so the guy took out the gun, and then obviously he wanted to shoot at the person who was resisting. And the source says that the bullet grazed the passenger, but hit the businessman fatally, wounding him. And the police goes on to say that they are investigating a case of murder, and no arrests have been made so far, and they're obviously appealing for anybody with information to come forward as well. And I think we need to be careful, isn't it? Especially when we're traveling late at night. For us, like journalists, we travel very late at night because our bulletins are so late at night. We need to be cognizant, be aware of your surroundings, ensure that there's nobody there, make sure that all your doors are locked, do not carry any of your bags or laptop bags in front of you. Rather put it in a boot, but be aware of your surroundings, because this is unnecessary loss of life. And don't be resistant. If they come to you pointing a gun at your window, I know you must obviously protect your stuff, but let them take what they want. Can you replace what you can never replace a life? you can always replace your equipment or the money that's been stolen. And think about the family of this person, that what he has to go through losing a life. Now on to our tech segment. Lighter, thinner, and slimmer. The new Apple MacBook looks lovely. And if you haven't seen pictures, Google it. The 12-inch Retina MacBook is real, and it's simply called MacBook. No other fancy name, just MacBook. Yes, it's beautiful, and I invoke you to go have a look at it on Twitter. It is absolutely beautiful, especially in the gold finish shown on stage during the launch. It is also available in space gray and silver, and that's largely due to the metal chassis and quite breathtaking slimness. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, this is just 13.1 millimeters thick, 24% thinner than the existing MacBook Air, and it weighs just, listen to this, 907 grams. It is thinner, but full size in that each key, that means each keyboard key, a 17% larger surface area. On the top of that, Apple has redesigned the actual key press mechanism. Gone is the scissor mechanism that sees keys depressed slightly wonkily. Also, there's now a butterfly mechanism that sees each button depress more uniformly. Apparently, they are 4 times more stable than keys on existing MacBooks, if you insist on putting a figure on these particular things. The touchpad has an upgrade too. It's the form of more hinge to it, can be clicked anywhere on its surface, as well as a couple of features inherited from the Apple Watch that's also been launched now recently and is available for sale. Taptic feedback and force touch, which means the touchpad responds to different degrees of pressure. Absolutely brilliant. And apparently the new MacBook Air is the most energy efficient notebook in the world. Combine that with all that of the battery power, and you've got an all-day battery life of up to 9 hours of web browsing or 10 hours of iTunes movie playback. Absolutely brilliant. Now, there's just one port on the new MacBook Air. The USB-C port combines DisplayPort, HDMI, VGA, USB, and power in one. Best of all, it's been developed with a load of other manufacturers. So while the new MacBook Air is the first to get the new industry standard that should widespread in the months. Availability, well, you'll have to wait just a little while. The new MacBook Air isn't shipping overseas until the 10th of April. But in terms of price, it doesn't seem massively outrageous like Apple products normally are. The cheaper of the two models overseas is roughly about 19,300 Rand, which gets you a 1.1 gigahertz dual-core Intel Core, 8 gigs of RAM, and 256 hard drive. 24,000 Rand doubles the storage and ups the processor to about 1.2 gigahertz. And finally, we're going to have to wait a little while for the core to give for the core group in South Africa to give us pricing and availability, but we expect them to stay around this particular region. So you must let me know what your thoughts. Google it, let me know. Absolutely brilliant piece of equipment. I love my Apple products, as the viewers will be aware. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of another edition of Perspective. You can join me again next week for news that are making local headlines, national headlines, or international headlines. Remember, you can interact with me by sending me a tweet on Faizel143, or you can even drop me a comment on my email, Faizel@itvnetworks.tv, or on facebook.com/Faizel Patel. From myself, Faizel Patel, and the magnificent team here at ITV, fi amanillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أناجي الحق في ليل لهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل لهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى صرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى فيا ربي أنا عبد لرد الضيم لا يقوى أعني ربي في أمر